We've now got one major session left, and I think it's an extremely important one because it's looking at the perspectives of two national agencies. And of course, we all know that the climate crisis is a problem that takes concerted effort at a high level as well as bottom-up action. So I'm delighted to see that we've got speakers today from Nuffic and from Movetia in Switzerland. So I'd like to please welcome Adinda van Gaalen and Héloïse Perrin.
Good afternoon. My name is Adinda van Gaalen. I work as a Senior Policy Officer at Nuffic in the Netherlands, and I am a PhD candidate at Ghent University in Belgium. I would like to share with you my experience with developing a more sustainable travel policy for Nuffic. We decided to develop this policy based on a few developments in the world. More specifically, the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations, the Green Deal and also the Greening Erasmus of the European Commission, the National Climate Agreements by the Dutch government, the Travel Differently initiative by several Dutch companies, and the SDG Charter, which was signed by all of the Dutch higher education institutions. So when looking at these developments, we decided that we also want to make our contribution to particularly decreasing the carbon footprint. And we looked at our carbon footprint by source, and we immediately saw that traveling was the top one cause of emissions of our organization, which is not surprising as international mobility is core to our mission. Now that is also a dilemma, because if we want to reach a green ambition, while also still striving towards more international mobility, we are wondering where to start, what choices to make, and how to balance these two seemingly opposite aims. At the same time, we also, as an organization at a national level, would like to set an example for higher education institutions and institutions at in other education sectors in the Netherlands, before asking them to contribute as well. So what we decided to do was to develop our own more sustainable travel policy. And we started by finding ambassadors within the organization, which was fairly easy. It turned out that many of my colleagues are very much involved with both the Sustainable Development Goals and with, being very much aware of our carbon footprint and of the dilemma that I just sketched. So these ambassadors, as we call them, came together and started to think about how to change our travel policy. And we got inspiration from literature and from good practices in higher education in the Netherlands and elsewhere. And we looked at how we could link the more sustainable travel policy to already existing policies within our organization, such as the travel policy itself, but also the sustainable aims that we have in our organization and the policies related to them. So we started to talk to our colleagues, and we developed together with colleagues from various departments a new policy, and we sent it out to the different departments for feedback. We received a lot of feedback, but particularly very positive feedback. So most of our colleagues very much welcome a more sustainable travel policy, even though it means a lot to their actual traveling. We were very much surprised by this, and positively, of course. We also received a lot of ideas on how to implement this policy. And so we took all of this advice to our board and discussed it with them. And the board was also very positive about this idea, even though they also saw a few problems that might need to be solved. But they gave us a formal assignment to look at these potential problems and to also set up discussions within the organization to make sure that there is sufficient commitment from the staff to actually implement this policy. So what does the policy entail? Well, it's a draft policy for now, and it's probably very much similar to the policies that have been presented earlier today. So we would like to consider alternatives to traveling, for instance, online meetings, as the default option. So if in previous years we would travel, we would like to consider if it's possible by online meeting first before we actually travel. Then if traveling is actually needed, then the train should be the default option within 750 kilometers from The Hague. If flying is necessary, then direct flights are needed whenever possible. And then we still want to compensate any carbon emissions. Now, deviation of this policy is possible if there are compelling reasons. And this was really something that came from the feedback from our colleagues. As there might be situations, for instance, health issues in which someone will need to travel by plane, for instance. So there are options to deviate, though we hope there will be very little deviation. Now, this was the inward looking part, and now I would like to look outward, because now that we have almost established this policy for Nuffic itself, we would also like to share our experiences and the experiences of other higher education institutions in the Netherlands in order to create awareness in higher education, and particularly in internationalization of higher education. We will do this by sharing best practices. We have actually already done so. We have created a web page on our website, specifically aimed at sharing best practices from the Netherlands and from abroad. Also, there's literature, there are websites, etc. We would also like to offer a platform for discussion, for instance, by organizing webinars. And we would like to increase the sustainability in our own support programs. So we are obviously already working on this in the Erasmus Plus program, but we also have many other programs supporting internationalization of higher education. And we would like to look at each and every one of them to see how we can implement a more sustainable travel policy in them. Well, thank you very much for your attention. And I would love to get in touch with you, so please do reach out if you would like to share your experiences on this topic with me. Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for choosing this presentation about national perspective on greening mobility. I am Héloïse Perrin. I am working as project coordinator for the higher education sector at Movetia, the Swiss national agency. So Movetia is promoting and encouraging the mobility, the exchanges, and the cooperation activities in all different sectors of education. From 2014, Switzerland is not longer part of the Erasmus Plus program, but has created its own Swiss European Mobility Program, the SEMP, to maintain the mobility between between Switzerland and Europe and the higher education staff and students. Now, I would like to share with you the experience of Switzerland I'm very glad to share that with you. So the question is now what is happening in Switzerland. So apart from the pandemic, which is also hitting us hard, we also had demonstration in 2019, bringing together all generation to call for more measures to tackle global warming. Last year, we also renewed our parliament, the result. So we have never had so many elected representatives from environmental parties. This is also a strong signal from Swiss citizens. The State Secretariat for Education, Research and Innovation is also clear in its latest message, calling for incentives for more environmentally friendly mobility. This gives us an official legal basis to work on. In Switzerland, higher education institutions are also active on these issues, since according to our data, 53% of them have developed a sustainable development strategy. We also count 15% of the institutions that have enacted strict rules for air travel. Here, I have taken 3 examples of universities that have launched projects to reduce CO2 emission related to air travel. So in Lausanne, the EPFL, with its Travelless Without Loss project, is raising awareness among its employees and students through training and information on the campus. Reductions are also offered to students who take the train when they are doing a mobility. In Basel, the Less But More project took place following an initiative by students who asked the board for measures to reduce the production of CO2 linked with the mobility. So each department can choose the measures to be implemented. A bottom-up model inspired by the Stay Grounded, Keep Connected project at the ETH in Zurich. So these large institutions indeed launched in 2017 a project based on a strong methodology. So they asked each organizational unit to choose an objective in terms of CO2 reduction and to choose also the measures used to achieve it. And air travel are recorded with a tracking system. Here you see a map created by the ETH Zurich and the SBB, so the Swiss Federal Railways. It shows destination from Switzerland and the travel time by train and or by plane. So the CO2 production is also compared. And it becomes clear that destinations close to Switzerland are greener reached by train. And in some cases, it is even quicker than flying. The key question is now whether it is possible to maintain the growth of international mobility and at the same time integrate greener mobility. So some people have doubts about this compatibility, and at Movetia, we want to take up the challenge. So what is the role of a national agency? It is possible actually to act in different ways. So do we want to implement restrictive or incentive measures? For example, the obligation to take the train when the destination can be reached in less than 4 hours by train, or by offering a special grant for people traveling by train? Or do we want to launch an awareness campaign or create special information material? Or do we want to become a center of advisory for greening mobility or platform to collect good practices in the country? So actually, Movetia decided to do a little bit of all of this. So for the potential incentive measures, we are still in discussion, but concretely, we have already created information material this spring with fact sheet that gives inputs for developing greener mobility. And we are also finalizing a kit for the international relations offices, the EROs, that will be used to raise awareness among the staff and the students. We also organized a webinar last April in collaboration with SwissCore and ESN International. So we try to launch also a discussion on Twitter with the hashtag Greener Mobility Exchange. You can also use it now if you feel like. And we also participated in the EI conference this autumn with a poster of best practices. Internally, we didn't go as far as the Nuffic. However, we have set up a working group to reflect on the development of more environmentally friendly mobility within our programs, but also internally. That's it for my part. And I hope you have questions for me, because I will be very happy to answer them. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Héloïse and Adinda. Welcome to the screen. How are you ladies doing this morning? Afternoon?
Afternoon, almost evening. I'm doing very well, thanks.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Yes, it's evening here in Switzerland too. Yeah.
The sun's just coming out in Vancouver, so what a delight. So before we move to the Q&A, because I know that there was a poll question for the audience, just wanted to sort of launch that. So the development of greener mobility as higher education institutions, what do you expect from a national agency? And you can select any of these, and we encourage you as our participants to engage and tell us what your choices are. You can choose more than one, whether it's financial support, advice, recommendations, promotional materials, very specific rules that might restrict or limit measures, lobbying for policy measures at a national level, research on the environmental effects of internationalization, or other. And if it is an other, we please do encourage you to drop your comments in the chat. We'll give everyone a few more minutes, a few more seconds. The answers are coming in fast and furious, which is great. Perfect, perfect. Okay, so that is all done. Have a look so you can see there that advice and recommendations is sort of the top sort of expectations or support that people are looking for, is followed closely by lobbying for policy measures at a national level, as well as sort of research on the environmental effects of internationalization. Financial support is in there as well, but it's really interesting to see that like those four are really what people are looking for. So thank you so much for that. What are your thoughts on those responses? Anything surprising there, Héloïse or Adinda?
Yes, actually, I thought that there would be more response on the financial issue, because that's usually an issue in internationalization. So, and the lobbying part, I did not expect to be this interesting to people. So that's, yeah, that's also surprising to me.
Yes, and for me, actually, yes, I'm surprised to see they would like to have more advice, more recommendation. That's so. I thought it would be more about this material to promote greener mobility, and then that's very interesting for me to read that. So yeah.
Yeah, all furiously taking notes for future sort of support measures. Great. So thank you so much for those presentations. That was fantastic, and I think really valuable for people to see. So in terms of questions, in general, and Adinda, I'll ask you first, and Héloïse on this first question, if you have anything to add afterwards. In general, why is staff mobility more targeted than student mobility? Let's start there.
Well, that is because what we see is that staff mobility is usually very much part of the university policies, whereas student mobility is more of a individual choice by students. Sometimes it is part of a program, but very often it is also really an individual initiative. Whereas for staff, it's obviously part of their job, of their tasks, and therefore the institution is able to set the restrictions or to give incentives on this issue. And so, and another thing is that staff tend to travel more for short terms, so for a short period, sorry, and also quite long distances sometimes. So the impact that they have can be larger than the impact that students have.
Perfect.
Yeah, if I can just add, it's true that according to our data for this kind of mobility, for the staff mobility between Switzerland and Europe, on average, we are talking about 3 days. So it's very short, this kind of mobility. And if we stay in Central Europe, it's actually really easy to, I mean, it's easy to reach cities, big cities with the train. And I think there is a big potential here to make it better, so to promote trains.
Wonderful, thank you so much. Quick question from the audience, from Matt Lyle. Hi, Matt. For Héloïse specifically, could you go over just briefly the sort of best practices that you're sort of alluding to, just a couple key takeaways there?
Yeah, so for sure. So I could talk very longer about this, but yeah, it's true. So, but first you can read a bit more about these best practices in our fact sheet. So I put the link on the chat so you can have it. But yes, we have very nice best practices in Switzerland, for example, at the ETH. So I mentioned it in my presentation. They really actually launch a project with a strong methodology. So it was really a bottom-up project, and they really wanted to involve all the administration, all the department, really to be part of this initiative to really reduce CO2 emissions. So they have a target, and they are working together, and thanks to this tracking they have, they can know every month actually how much they are reaching this objective or not. And yeah, it's very, for me, it's a very good project. So I think you can to read more on the website of the ETH. Is actually stay grounded, keep connected, that's the name. So you will find a lot of documentations too. But we also have other examples also coming from smaller institutions, because it's true that in Switzerland the big institutions have more resources to launch this kind of project. But we also have good example with smaller institutions like the University of Art in Zurich, and they also tried to reduce of 38% the CO2 emissions coming from air travel, which is already good. And they did it also first by having a discussion in the staff and to see how they could also reduce it, and they have some incentive measures. So it's another example. Yeah, but you can still read more on our website.
Great, and there's also a request for Adinda to add her best practices. Any links to that in the chat, so we can definitely go to that. And I did want to follow up with another question because we're short on time, so this will be the last of it. And then we will discuss at length in future conversations, I'm sure, is how do you see sort of collaboration between higher education institutions and national agencies? And again, I'll start with Adinda there.
Well, I think that collaboration is really essential to tackling this problem, particularly because national agencies are also responsible for a lot of the programs that are being used in higher education institutions. So if we want to support them, then we really should connect and see how we can change those programs to help them decrease the carbon footprint in their institutions. But the other way around also, so we can also learn a lot from the higher education institutions, and we have already done so. So for instance, the Radboud University in the Netherlands has also given us a lot of inspiration of how we can contribute to this. So I think it's really worthwhile to look for all of these possible collaborations and to continue sharing our knowledge both ways.
Wonderful. And Héloïse, any final words on that topic?
Yes, for sure. We would like to be to collect all these best practices, and also to be in contact, to exchange more also with the institutions. And we already did it last year for our for our annual event. So we did a workshop on this topic, and we invited also someone coming from the ETH to talk about the project and to show that it's possible to do something and it can work. So yes, it's definitely something to also to make it stronger, these relations.
Yeah, there's certainly some power there, and that's really great. So I just want to thank you both for those presentations and for your time today and for your time in advance of this. So thank you so much.